All right, let's dive into this Robert F. Kennedy Jr. message. It's about the American food system, right?
Yeah. And what it might be doing to our health.
Interesting.
He's making some pretty serious claims. He's arguing that what we eat plays like a huge role in why Americans aren't as healthy as people in other, developed countries. So it's not just like another rant about fast food or anything like that.
Okay, yeah.
What's really interesting to me is that RFK Jr. is suggesting that even the foods that we think are healthy could be hiding some pretty nasty ingredients.
Oh, okay. So he's going beyond just, like, the obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he talks about how American life expectancy has been falling behind other developed countries since, like, the early 1990s.
Right.
And he connects this trend to the rise of, all these chronic diseases, obesity, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, all that stuff. And he makes this really interesting comparison. Like, think about it. Restaurants can get shut down for serving food that's contaminated, but the government's totally fine with allowing all these potentially harmful substances in the food that we buy at the supermarket every day.
That makes you wonder, right?
It really does.
Like, what's going on? What's the priority?
Yeah.
To illustrate this point, RFK Jr. uses the example of junk food, something I think we're all familiar with. So let's say you've got a bag of Doritos.
Okay.
Or Cheetos.
Right, yeah. Not the healthiest choices. We all know that. But RFK Jr., he focuses specifically on this one ingredient, tartrazine, which is also known as yellow dye, #5. And the story behind this dye is kind of wild.
Okay.
It was originally derived from coal tar.
Coal tar?
Yeah, like the stuff they used to pave roads with.
In my food?
I know, right?
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. And then later on, they started making it from petroleum, which I guess is maybe a little bit better.
I don't know. That doesn't sound much better to me.
I know, right? But either way, it's not exactly like an appetizing thought.
No, not really.
And what's worse is that tartrazine has been linked to all sorts of health problems,
Really?
We're talking tumors, asthma, developmental delays in children, and even neurological damage.
Wow. So this stuff is potentially pretty dangerous. But it's in Doritos, so it's okay.
You'd think that would be enough to raise some red flags, right?
Yeah, you would think.
And get this. Other countries have heavily restricted or even banned tartrazine. Some even require warning labels on products that contain it.
Wow. Like you're saying, hey, this might be bad for you, but it's your choice.
It is kind of a mixed message.
It's pretty wild when you think about it.
Yeah. And here's the real kicker. RFK Jr. points out that tartrazine isn't just in junk food, like Doritos.
Oh, no.
It's also lurking in foods that are marketed as healthy.
Oh, so it's not just a matter of choosing the salad over the burger.
Not necessarily, no.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about things like popcorn, mac and cheese, fruit snacks, sports drinks, things you might even give your kids thinking they're making healthy choices.
Hold on. So you're saying I might be feeding my kids this chemical that could cause developmental problems, and it's totally legal?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Oh, wow.
He even mentions finding it in chicken broth, pickles, yogurt. It's like everywhere.
It's like, how do you even avoid it?
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic, right? Because we give our kids chewable vitamins that contain the same dyes we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, it's a little, I don't know. It's a bit of a head scratcher, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And RFK Jr. makes it clear that tartrazine is just one example.
Okay.
He lists a bunch of other potentially harmful additives that are allowed in our food, like Red 40, BHA, BHT, potassium bromate, and the list goes on and on.
So we've got all these chemicals in our food, but no one really knows what they're doing to us long term.
Yeah, that seems to be his concern, that the combined effects of all these additives haven't been adequately studied. So we're essentially participating in this giant experiment without fully understanding the consequences.
That is a little unsettling.
It really makes you think about what we're putting into our bodies.
It does, but it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Right.
RFK Jr. does say that the U.S. government has actually banned 8 cancer-causing additives in the last 16 years.
Yeah, that's true. And it's worth noting that all those bans happened under President Trump. So, there is some progress being made.
Okay, so at least there's some action.
Yeah.
That's good.
But what's interesting is that other countries have gone even further and banned more additives than the U.S. So clearly there's still room for improvement.
Okay, so we've established that there's potentially harmful chemicals in a lot of the food we eat.
Right.
And that the U.S. could be doing more to regulate them. Where do we go from here?
That's a really good question. And it's something that RFK Jr. really challenges us to think about. Like, What would a truly healthy food system look like? And what role do we as individuals play in creating that system?
Okay, so we've got a problem, but we're not powerless. I like that. What steps can we take to protect ourselves and, push for change?
That's a great question, and one that we'll explore more in depth as we continue this deep dive.
So we're talking about taking action, like both personally and maybe on a larger scale.
Yeah, exactly. And RFK Jr., he makes this a compelling point about the potential benefits of removing these harmful additives from our diets. Like, we could see fewer sick days, better focus, less anxiety.
Wow.
Even improvements in, children's learning.
Those are some pretty significant benefits.
And there's more.
Okay.
He suggests that we might experience weight loss, increased energy, fewer tumors, and even, longer lifespans.
Really?
Yeah, it makes you wonder what we're missing out on by just, accepting these additives as normal.
It really does. And it's not just about individual health, right? Think about the cost of treating all these chronic diseases that are linked to poor diet.
Yeah.
It's got to be astronomical.
Oh, absolutely. The financial implications are huge. Imagine if we invested in a healthier food system. We might actually save money in the long run.
Okay, I'm convinced. Sign me up for this healthier food system.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like? What can we do as individuals to actually make a difference?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. It starts with awareness. We need to educate ourselves about what's in our food, read labels carefully, and make informed choices.
So no more blindly grabbing whatever's on sale at the supermarket.
Exactly. Start asking questions. Do your research. And don't be afraid to vote with your wallet. Support companies that are transparent about their ingredients and committed to producing healthier products.
I can definitely get on board with that.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Healthy food can be expensive. How do we make this accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford it?
That's a crucial point. And it's something that RFK Jr. touches on as well. We need to advocate for policies that support a healthier food system.
Okay, yeah.
We can push for stricter regulations on harmful additives, support initiatives that make healthy food more affordable, and encourage the development of, sustainable agricultural practices.
It's a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility combined with systemic change.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that we're not alone in this, right? Yeah. There are organizations and individuals all over the country working to create a healthier food system.
This whole conversation is really making me think about the bigger picture. It's not just about what we eat. It's about our values, our priorities, and the kind of world we want to live in.
You've hit the nail on the head. And that brings us to something that we've been exploring on the Standing in the Gaps podcast. They're kind of delving into the intersection of politics, life, and finances, all through a biblical lens.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. They're the ones who talk about how our faith can inform our actions and inspire us to make a positive impact on the world, right?
Exactly. And they have this really interesting take on stewardship, which ties in perfectly with what we've been discussing today.
Stewardship. Yeah. Like taking care of what we've been given.
Yes. Stewardship of our bodies, our resources, and even our planet. It's about recognizing that everything's interconnected and our choices have consequences.
That really resonates with RFK Jr.'s message, He's essentially calling for a more conscious and responsible approach to food, one that prioritizes health and well-being over, profit and convenience.
And the Standing in the Gaps podcast kind of takes that idea a step further. They're exploring how our faith can guide us in making those difficult choices, even when they're not the easiest or most popular.
So it's about aligning our actions with our values, even when it comes to something as, seemingly mundane as what we eat.
Precisely. And they're actually running a GoFundMe campaign right now to expand their reach and continue these important conversations.
That's awesome. I'm all about supporting initiatives that promote, conscious living and positive change. What's their GoFundMe for?
They're raising funds to, upgrade their equipment, produce more episodes, and reach a wider audience with their message.
That's fantastic. I'm definitely going to check it out. We'll be sure to include a link in the show notes for our listeners who are interested.
We'll make sure to do that.
So back to RFK Jr.'s message. We talked about personal action. We talked about systemic change. What else can we do to push for a healthier food system?
Well, it's not just about making changes ourselves. It's about, raising awareness and having conversations with others. Talk to your friends and family about what you're learning. Share information online. Support organizations that are working to make a difference.
So it's about being a voice for change, spreading the word, inspiring others to get involved.
Exactly. Remember, even small actions can create a ripple effect.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Right. Right.
Except in this case, it's eat the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And it might start with something as simple as like swapping out that bag of brightly colored chips for a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
Or some nuts, or reading labels more carefully, and, choosing products with fewer additives.
Yeah, no more grabbing the first box of mac and cheese, I see. We'll be checking those labels from now on. And maybe try and cook more at home so I know what's going into my food.
Those are great steps. It's about becoming more conscious consumers, advocating for clearer labeling, and supporting companies that, align with our values.
And it's not just about individual choices, is it?
Right.
We can also make a difference in our communities, like getting involved with local food banks, supporting farmers markets, speaking up for, healthier school lunch programs.
Absolutely. Those are all fantastic ways to kind of translate our values into action and create that ripple effect.
Yeah.
It's about building a culture of health and well-being, one choice at a time.
And recognizing that all those individual choices add up to a collective impact. That's what I find so inspiring about RFK Jr.'s message, He's not just pointing out a problem, he's offering a vision for a healthier and more just food system.
He is. He's reminding us that we have a voice and we can use it to demand better, advocate for change, create a future where our food actually nourishes us instead of potentially harming us.
That's a future I want to be a part of creating. This whole deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least.
It's definitely a lot to think about. But remember, you don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Start small, make gradual changes, and be patient with yourself.
And remember, we're not alone in this journey. There are resources available, like the Standing in the Gaps podcast, that can provide guidance and support as we navigate these complex issues.
Absolutely. They offer this really unique perspective, grounded in faith and biblical principles that can really help us make sense of the world around us and find our place in the movement for positive change.
If you're interested in learning more about their message and supporting their work, you can check out the link to their GoFundMe campaign in our show notes. They're doing some really incredible work, and we highly recommend giving them a listen.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into RFK Jr.'s message, we want to leave you with this final thought. What one small step can you take today to move toward a healthier, more just food system?
It could be as simple as reading a label, trying a new recipe, or having a conversation with a friend about what you've learned.
Every step we take, no matter how small, brings us closer to that vision of a future where food is a source of nourishment and well-being for all. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.